From an exceedingly evil Ursula to horrifying references from the original tragic fairy tale, there are a stack of gruesome changes and sinister secrets hidden in Disney's live-action remake of The Little Mermaid. Let's kick things off with Ursula, one of Disney's most iconic villains, and the new movie really amps up what a despicable baddie she truly is. So when we first meet her this time, she's complaining about wasting away in exile while spearing some shrimp with her fingernail and chomping it down as a snack. This addition is also a grisly little bit of foreshadowing for her own death at the end when she gets stuck with the pointy end of a ship's mast. And for the remake, Ursula's lair has acquired some even scarier creatures compared to the animated version. Gone are the polyps which contain the souls of merfolk that came back to life after Ursula died, and these have been replaced by nightmarish, single-eyed, Lovecraftian monsters that remind me of the monster in the Doctor Strange sequel. These new creatures grab Ariel by the neck at one point in a deep-cut reference to the original fairy tale, where one of the polyps outside the Sea Witch's house strangled a little mermaid to death. As for why the filmmakers cut the original movie's polyps, director Rob Marshall thought that seeing them turn back into people was something that could only work in animation, and that Triton turning into a polyp would be too comical for a live-action movie. In the new movie, the floor in Ursula's cave is littered with skulls and even the entire skeleton of a merperson, proving that the fate of those who crossed Ursula is now even worse than those poor unfortunate souls in the animation. This new look lair is also a nod to the original fairy tale, where the Sea Witch's house was located in the middle of a forest of serpent-like half-animal, half-plant polyps with long arms that trapped the skeletons of dead humans and animals which had sunk to the bottom of the sea. In fact, it's implied later on when Flotsam and Jetsam electrocute King Triton, draining him of life, that that's how Ursula kills her victims. By the way, the skeleton of the whale-like creature that forms Ursula's new lair is based on unused concept art from the animated movie. Live-action Ursula's transformation into a giant kaiju-like monster was very impressive, although her death in the remake is a little less grisly than the animation, with the camera cutting away when the ship's spike pierces the giant villain, and also her not getting electrocuted by lightning this time. In the new movie though, Ursula does become even more monstrous, with gruesome gills added to her cheeks and huge deadened eyes, possibly a hat tip to her evil red eyes in this scene in the animated movie. When Disney first adapted Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale for their animated classic, they softened many of the darker edges of the original story. However, many of these are back in various forms in the new film. So during Ariel's transformation, listen very carefully, and you'll hear tearing sounds as her tail rips and splits into two. In Andersen's original story, the Sea Witch tells the Little Mermaid that when the potion transforms her fin into human legs, she will feel great pain as if a sword were passing through her body. And later on, when Scuttle asks Sebastian whether Ariel has killed the prince yet, it's a sneaky, sinister reference to how, in the fairy tale, when the Little Mermaid failed to gain the prince's true love, her mermaid sisters struck a deal with the Sea Witch that if she killed the prince with a dagger and put his blood on her feet, she would be able to turn back into a mermaid. In Andersen's story, if the prince ended up marrying another woman, the Little Mermaid's fate would be to die the next morning and become the foam that floats on the crest of the ocean waves. So when the movie's opening scene is of giant foaming waves, it's no coincidence. At the start, there's also a quote from Andersen's fairy tale, but a mermaid has no tears and therefore she suffers so much more. A moment which pays off at the very end when in her human form, Ariel sheds a tear as she says goodbye to her father. Likewise, the fairy tale also ends with the Little Mermaid's tears as she refuses to kill the prince and so gains an eternal soul. A small but significant and bloody change in the live action is how Ariel agrees to her deal with Ursula by signing it in blood after plucking a scale from her own tail, rather than signing her name as she did in the animated movie. This sidesteps a commonly cited plot hole from the animation, that Ariel could have easily explained to Eric why she was mute by writing down how she'd lost her voice and that she was the one who saved him. In tune with many of Disney's live-action remakes, some of the wackier, more slapstick elements from the animation have been removed from this version. An unfortunate casualty is French chef Louis, notorious for his obsessive and ridiculously OTT efforts to catch and cook the little crab Sebastian, and he's been chopped out of the new film, meaning of course that the song Les Poissons is also missing.
How I love les poissons! Love to chop and to serve little fish!
There is, however, a nod to that sequence in both the castle's fishy tiles and when Sebastian says he could have been fricasseed trying to reach Ariel. In the animated movie, one of the thingamabobs that Ariel found in the sunken ship was a tobacco pipe that was amusingly named and described by Scuttle.
A banded, bulbous snarfblat.
However, since 2007, Disney has banned the depiction of any smoking products in any of its movies rated PG-13 or less, so all of the amusing animated scenes featuring the snarfblat have been completely banished from the remake. The live-action movie reveals that Ursula is actually Triton's sister, making her dastardly scheme against Ariel, her own niece, feel even worse and more malevolent. The film also explains that Ariel's mother was killed by humans. However, what was left out, but explained in the movie's novelisation, is that Ursula's actions were also responsible for that death. Apparently 15 years earlier, the Sea Witch shapeshifted into the form of Triton's wife, the Sea Queen, and then attacked a human ship, but was caught. And when Ariel's mother decided to help Ursula escape, she ended up dying. This was the event that led Triton to banish his wicked sister, and it also appears that Eric's birth family was killed during Ursula's attack, and she's therefore the reason why he was shipwrecked and orphaned and ended up being adopted. Similar to The Lion King, the live-action Little Mermaid strives for a photorealistic world in its depiction of life under the sea. Although this is a technically impressive feat, it does mean a good deal of the expressive emotions conveyed by the animated animals isn't translated into live action. Of all the characters, Flounder suffered the most from this, and the internet completely freaked out when they saw him for the first time, as visually he simply doesn't have the fun and vibrancy of his cartoon counterpart. By the way, I thought it was a little shocking how Scuttle quite casually swooped into the water in front of Ariel and Flounder to snack on some fish. Obviously gannets and other birds do eat fish in real life, but it was a little weird how Ariel wasn't shocked at the horror of this.
You okay, Flounder?
Sure. You gotta show him who's in charge.
It's just Scuttle.
While being clearly perturbed later on at seeing pictures of fish on hooks in the human world. Sebastian's new look is based on the Cuban land crab, and he has a much larger front right claw than his left one, another change made to make the crab as realistic as possible. Because he has larger eyes than his fish friends though, he still has a little more ability to emote, though it can't quite compare to the animation in this regard. And while the live action version of Under the Sea is visually spectacular, indeed it looks just gorgeous, and it's very impressive, reminding me of some of Busby Berkeley's choreography, it doesn't quite hit the comedic notes of the original song as it strives to be more photo-real. There's definitely a lot of interesting changes in the remake, and I'd love to hear what you thought of them. I especially enjoyed Halle Bailey and Melissa McCarthy's performances, and if you enjoyed this video, do leave a thumbs up and subscribe to get more videos like this. Thanks for enjoying The Little Mermaid with me, and hope you have a marvellous movie-loving week. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers!